Welcome to Window Dressing. I am Madeline Jane Opple, and this is my very extra special Halloween episode. Maxine, last summer's horror hit starring Mia Goth as porn star Maxine Minx, is set to be available to stream on Max on October 18th. What better time to tackle it and the true crime that surrounds the film? Maxine is the third film in the trilogy written and directed by Ty West. The triptych includes X and Pearl, both released in 2022. Pearl is a prequel to X, and Maxine is the sequel to X. Pearl and X are more traditional horror films, what I like to call barnhouse horror. Too scary for me and not my area of expertise. In fact, I want to say up top that I am not a horror expert, and as a result, I may miss references along the way. X is Maxine's origin story. She is a young Southern runaway who turns porn actress as means of escape. She has a run-in with an aged and obsessed Pearl, whom after missing her own chance at stardom, is enamored by the overtly sexual Maxine. She is destined for stardom after all. Maxine murders Pearl and her husband in self-defense. Pearl is the youthful version of the old lady in X. She is a pretty and young woman who fails to make it out of her small town to become a star via traveling show. She murders her parents and stays stuck in the house she grew up in. There are several rousing monologues and a decaying pig that references the decaying rabbit in Polanski's 1965 film Repulsion. It rots in the background as Catherine Deneuve slowly loses her mind and begins to kill any man that enters her London flat. Similar to Hitchcock's film Marnie, Deneuve is sickened by men. Deneuve's character is triggered by the smell of men. Marnie, played by Tippi Hedren, is set off by the color red. Marnie leans more Freudian psychological thriller, and Repulsion is more horror. The advantage of Maxine is that it takes place in a true crime-saturated LA, the year of my birth, and not the barnyard backwoods of slaughterhouses and Texas chainsaw massacres. Maxine wields a gun like a sex-positive heroine, as imagined by a man, but even so, there is nothing I like more than a woman with blood on her hands. Making the femme fatale into the hero in skimpier clothes is sort of horror's current beat as the new feminist genre. I definitely am not suggesting Ty West is leading the way in this arena. For me, this is a gateway film into perms and true crime, and less a feminist masterpiece like the 2008 film Jennifer's Body. Megan Fox won my heart through mean girl-style evisceration of men, or as she calls them, boys. Maxine takes place in the summer of 1985 in Los Angeles. The Night Stalker was active, and we were just 4 years out from the Four on the Floor, aka the Wonderland murders in Laurel Canyon. I bring that case up because of the porn star connection. John Holmes, at the height of his career in porn, was accused and tried for the murders. He went free, accepting a contempt of court charge that kept him in jail for a while. Eddie Nash, the man suspected and in fact charged with ordering the murders, was sentenced to mere months in prison in 2001. Holmes died of AIDS in a VA hospital in 1989. He continued to work after his diagnosis and infected countless people in the porn industry knowingly. This was the environment for sex work in the 1980s. It was dangerous, drug-addled, and not glamorous. The Night Stalker is one of the only serial killers that I am afraid of, even post his 2013 death in prison. I live on a dead-end street in Laurel Canyon, far away from any highway on-ramp. Ramirez or his ilk are not likely to find me here. That being said, there have been 2 brutal murders on my street and one of Los Angeles' most famed murders around the corner, the latter being the Wonderland murders. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was eventually apprehended by citizens of Los Angeles while he was fleeing police. The vigilante justice was lauded by officials, and it made for a rousing town pride Tuesday morning here in Los Angeles. The Wonderland murders remain officially unsolved, although Eddie Nash was charged with conspiracy to commit the murders, and his bodyguard, along with John Holmes, likely actually committed the murders. It is believed that there are 1 to 2 more perpetrators still at large. The other murders on my street include a young man who bludgeoned his grandmother to death with a frying pan, and a young housekeeper who was raped, murdered, and set on fire. My babysitter was killed in a similar fashion. Lacey Miller was her name. All of this is to say that Los Angeles crime and the time period I was born into make Maxine a gateway to nostalgia and media circus glee for me. There is a kind of bootstrap mentality to Maxine's character. She works by day as a porn star, by night at a peep show, and in her free time, she auditions for legit acting jobs. She gets a role in a new horror film called The Puritan 2, the sequel within the sequel. The movie is the ire of anti-porn, anti-horror, and especially the anti-Satan crowd. Satanic panic, which is explained ad nauseum and given special meaning in this film, was a phenomenon in the 1980s, in large part because of serial killers like the Night Stalker. He left pentagrams on the walls in his victims' homes and reportedly listened to metal on his way to kill. He also said things like the devil guided him and so on. Post the Manson killings in August of 1969, the environment was ripe for some 16 years later to develop into a well-worn fear of the devil. Every crime thereafter was compared to the Manson murders. That is, until crime became so bad that the collective we stopped doing that. Maxine isn't worried about crime, AIDS, or drug addiction. She is concerned with fame, or as she says, I will not accept a life I do not deserve. The adage is a gift from her father, a preacher turned serial killer who represents the patriarchy in its purest form. The buxom bootstrap babe makes her way through Hollywood in a twisty and turny homage of a film that climaxes on the Hollywood sign in a standoff with a shotgun to her daddy's face. The cult of Hollywood is taken over by a blonde porn star turned real star. I resent that the adage came from her daddy because her drive to be a star is the most feminist part of the film. The demand that she be compensated and celebrated in a world where the hatred for women is palpable is a radical act. Being a star is how she gains control over her fate. The right to control one's fate is at the very core of the American dream. Mia Goth, this film's scream queen, goes blonde for the role, and it's one of the most outstanding hair looks I have seen in some time. Meticulously styled to be slightly fried, permed, and parted on the side to suggest glamour, but glamour for the modern era. The female director of the film within a film, named Elizabeth Bender, is played by Elizabeth Debicki. She is the actress who plays Princess Diana on the Netflix series The Crown. Halsey plays Tabby, Maxine's co-worker, who is murdered at a Hollywood Hills party. Lily Collins plays Molly, her co-star in The Puritan 2, who was also murdered at a Hollywood Hills party. Moses Sumner plays Leon, Maxine's best friend and local video store clerk, who was also murdered. The setup is that the murders look like the Night Stalker, but it's really her daddy doing the deeds. Kevin Bacon plays one of the best roles in the film, John Labatt, a Louisiana-based private eye that works for Maxine's dad and spends the majority of the film hunting her down in his maroon Cadillac. The costumes are done by Marianne Seo. Mia Goth's hair and makeup looks were created by a team of 34 people, headed by Sarah Rubano. Rubano did a collaboration with makeup company Half Magic for a Maxine-inspired look. The collection includes several Maxine-worthy products, including the iconic blue shadow she wears, and an ultra-shiny lip gloss called VHS Vixen. The film opens with a Bette Davis quote. "In this business, until you're known as a monster, you're not a star." Or in other words, the villainization of women with power is a prerequisite to achieving that power to begin with. The fact that her path to the American dream is sex work and horror films is either obnoxious or an accurate portrayal of the reality of the world. I vote the latter, but certainly can see the former as valid. The reason why horror is such fertile ground for feminist film is because a woman's life is horrific, and her rage is perpetually unsatiated. Maxine walks into an audition held at a soundstage on the Universal lot. I know this because later in the film, she is taken to the Bates House and Motel on the same lot. She is wearing denim on denim with creamy white slouched stiletto boots and the previously mentioned blonde perm. Her eyes are shadowed with classic blue and paired with a more modern, especially at that time, glossed lip. Her makeup look says a lot about her power source and the layered history of makeup. The gloss lip that became big in the 1970s and 1980s, that remains a mainstay of lip looks today, is inspired by porn. The super-sexed wet lip is a post-blowjob look that became part of the culture after porn went mainstream with movie theater hits like Deep Throat. Linda Lovelace, Deep Throat's star, did not have the same experience as Maxine. Her power was stolen, not found through porn. Group rapes, a pimp boyfriend, and the sickness of Hugh Hefner's forced bestiality stole her light. Makeup, as we know it in our culture, was in large part inspired by sex. The flush of the cheeks that women painted on with rouge was first in fashion for prostitutes of yesteryear. There are more ancient expressions of power that come from feminine body and face adornment. A primary example in history is Cleopatra's blue eyes and charcoaled lashes. She crushed lapis lazuli, a semi-precious blue stone, to make her eyeshadow. That same hue covers Maxine's lids. This expression of power, whether sexual or stately, cannot be ignored as a key ingredient to Maxine's strength. Just as Dolly Parton colored her cheeks and lids with pokeberries and lined her brows with burnt matches, a woman's face wields power, and we know it. Maxine says to the director when questioned about making the switch from porn to horror, "I figure acting is acting." She throws in, "I want the good life," for good measure. As cliched as wanting the good life is, the sentiment is cloaked in a desire for freedom and power that is antithetical to the life of a female porn star in the 1980s. I'm not sure that a Hollywood star gets the happiness and power promised either, but the pursuit of it is what matters. Maxine leaves the audition in her white Mercedes convertible. This car is a huge part of what drew me to the film. The first time I drove a car like that was in my late teens when I worked for a con man in San Francisco who had one. I would fetch him bagels and coffee in it while wearing a fur coat and calling myself Bunny. My job mostly consisted of keeping his books, which was a confusing mix of true bookkeeping and creative expression. Later in our relationship, I threw a Tiffany lamp at him and allegedly stole several of his cars. The Mercedes was not one of them, but my choice to buy a similar car years later when I came to LA was inspired by his and the white Mercedes convertible that Sharon Stone's character Ginger drove in the 1995 film Casino. She rammed that car into her husband's Cadillac over and over in that movie. Ginger's expression of rage is the height of on-screen satisfaction for me. Maxine's car is a respectful nod to that. The importance of a car in LA can't be overstated. The fact that the Night Stalker stole different vehicles and used the highways as the arteries for his killing spree is one of the factors that makes him such a quintessentially Los Angeles serial killer. Living near a highway exit or entrance still carries with it a heavy dose of danger that is partly a result of crime statistics near highway on-ramps, generally, and well-worn lore that began with the Night Stalker. As a child of the 1980s, I was severely affected by the satanic panic and stranger danger of the era. The Night Stalker was and remains one of the scariest serial killers to me because of the randomness of his chosen victims. Outside of highway proximity, it was simply whose window, door, or garage was unlocked or open. After COVID, convenience-based smash and grab swept Los Angeles, particularly in the Valley. Those crimes come with a level of panic that was raised to hysteria in the media, but nothing close to the satanic panic of the 1980s. But, even still, who can forget Dorit Kemsley of Real Housewife fame harrowing brush with gun-toting bandits while her children were sleeping in the other room? But serial killer violence, like the Night Stalker, the Hillside Strangler, and the I-5 Killer, seem to be of an era that has passed. Why that is, what about the time period and culture created such heinous crimes, is an endlessly fascinating question. The rise of street crime by the end of the 1980s, closely linked to drugs, specifically cocaine and crack, changed the threshold of violence the public was used to, and the shock factor of dismembered corpses and pinnacles passed. There is the Gilgo Beach killer on the East Coast who targeted prostitutes. That was fairly recent, but the widespread outrage and fear of the 1980s serial killers seems monoculture dependent. The internet may have brought us crowdsourced sleuths and a database of missing people that you can cross-check with deceased Jane and John Does, but it also destroyed monoculture, creating pockets of interest that never rise to sustained hysteria of the nighttime news in 1985. Maxine leaves her job at the Peep Show on Hollywood Boulevard. This is after she worked filming skin flicks during the day. She has landed the part in the horror film she tried out for earlier and shares her good fortune with her co-worker, Tabby, played by Halsey. Tabby's response is envy and a bit of whimsy that she may get some good news like that one day, too. Maxine says, "It'll come, you just gotta work hard." This response is spectacular. The American ideology oozing out of Maxine's gloss lips is better than a cum shot. The belief in the dream of hard work being rewarded is equal parts naive and awe-inspired. To further push this narrative along, Tabby goes to a Hollywood Hills party that Maxine declines an invitation to. Tabby gets murdered. Maxine goes home because she has a wardrobe fitting in the morning at the studio for her legit actress job. Tabby going to the Hills party and Maxine declining so she can work towards the dream of being the one to throw a Hollywood Hills party reminds me of something Cher once said. "I don't want a rich man, I am a rich man." This is problematic on its face because it is essentially reiterating that the only avenue of achieving power is to become the oppressor. It is very second wave. But I give a pass to Cher because of the time period, not that she needs a pass from me. What if women could achieve power without being an exploitive monster? But on the other hand, we shouldn't hold women to a higher standard than men, especially because we are of lower value societally. That feels akin to blaming the woman your boyfriend cheated on you with instead of him. I would blame them both, but only if she knows you. That is a side issue, but it does accurately reflect how easily men escape accountability and women stay weak from carrying it for them. But again, this is a problem not solved by blaming women. It's one that requires forced accountability of men. Maxine puts her cigarette out on Theda Bara's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame as she heads home. Theda Bara was a notorious silent-era vamp who was born 100 years before Maxine put her cigarette out on her star, in 1885. Maxine takes a shortcut through an alley wearing her pointed-toe, white, slouchy stiletto boots when she reaches a locked gate. She turns around to realize that she is cornered by a man with a switchblade. He is dressed as the famous comedian Buster Keaton, another old Hollywood reference. He has the energy of a theater kid fop, taking his Bob Fosse dreams of exploitation out on easy prey. You know this guy likes to yell at women and then claim feminist status in between stabs. Maxine wins the knife fight by pulling out a gun. Another all-American move on her part. She makes him strip and sticks the barrel of the gun in his mouth and tells him to suck. As much as I enjoyed watching this particular kind of guy be humiliated, I have to point out again that the power Maxine gains is masculine in nature. We think this is badass because it is the kind of thing a man would do to a woman. So seeing her do it to him is especially satisfying. I am not saying I'm not satiated by it too, but I would have preferred if humiliation wasn't defined by mimicking a typically subservient and therefore feminine sex act. The next thing she does makes up for it. She smashes his balls with her heeled boot. Thanks, Maxine, from all of us who are sick of theater kid fops killing our joy. It turns out women can be funny too. Maxine's friends are dropping like flies. Tabby and her video clerk bestie are dead at the hands of what looks to be the Night Stalker, but is really a series of personalized vendetta killings aimed to injure Maxine and carried out by her religious zealot daddy. His personal bloodhound, Southern Dick John Labatt, follows her around, gets severely beaten up by Maxine, and eventually just leaves a note on her car. She meets him at a Hollywood eatery where he confronts her about her previous crimes and invites her to, surprise, surprise, Hollywood Hills party hosted by his unnamed employer. He leaves her with a newspaper clipping that reads, "The Texas Porn Star Massacre," a play on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the John Holmes-connected Wonderland killings. On set, Maxine is taken on a tour of the backlot by her token, strong female director, Elizabeth Bender. She tells Maxine that the producers of Puritan 2 don't want Maxine in the picture. I love this nod to the original way of referring to films as pictures. Barring the use of the word picture in place of film, her speech is too obnoxious to repeat verbatim. It's all about the moral majority and how nonsensical it is that the fact that Maxine is a porn star is the part people can't stomach, not the satanic horror part. It's basically satanic panic exposition in a modern feminist package. Feminist is in quotes in my script, and I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't in quotes in the margins of Ty West's too. It is truly a false flag of sex positivity positioned in a historically inaccurate background. Maxine's large hoop earrings and permed blonde hair do more to signal tough bitch than a female director and a porn star modeling accepted masculine ideals of power accomplish. In fact, I think the most successful part of this picture is Maxine's look. Her American Dream denim-on-denim audition outfit, oversized gold hoop earrings, and fried blonde hair are the stuff of star power. The director takes her to the Bates house and motel, both of which still stand at the Universal lot. For a movie that is laced with references, many of which I admittedly do not get because of the horror gap in my film education, this one is especially satisfying. Psycho marks the switch from film noir of the 40s and 50s to a new genre of psychological horror that combines and in many ways transcends monster movies and noir. By the 1970s, we get back into noir with yet another genre that is rooted in the 1940s, neo-noir. An example of this is Clute, which in many ways is referenced in the loneliness of Mia Goth's Maxine. There is nothing I like more than a woman alone on film, and Bree Daniels, Jane Fonda's character in Clute, sets the standard for lonely hookers on screen. Once they arrive at the Bates property, the director continues to pontificate like a real artist, this time about Psycho. She says, "A serial killer disguised as an old woman. America was too prudish to see it coming." I'm not sure I agree with that reading of the film, but whatever, I'll give it to her given it fits the narrative. Maxine is brought in by the police to look at the bodies of her dead friends who have been stamped, or rather cattle-prodded, with pentacles. The female detective, played by Michelle Monaghan, tries to activate Maxine's sense of duty to women. She says, "I want you to help me save the next girl's life." This is where Maxine expresses a not so easily dismissed sentiment. She says, "Maybe she should save herself. I did." Initially, this statement feels cold and frankly masculine, of the patriarchy and capitalism, blah, blah, blah. But it's also radical. Why should she be responsible for taking care of girls and women dying at the hands of a man? It is outrageous to put this on her or ask someone who has had to fight, claw, and literally fuck their way through life to use their energy and efforts to save someone else. Being a good woman is not as useful as being a self-sufficient one. This statement delivered by the female detective does get to Maxine, and she, post another showdown with the PI that ends in him being crushed in a junkyard inside his own Cadillac, decides to go to the party that the PI's employer requested her presence at. It is indeed the Hollywood Hills house that is situated in close proximity to the Hollywood sign and requires an angel flight-like tramcar ride to the house from the road. She enters a dark but visually stunning interior with a sunken living room, palm fronds, round lamps, and of course, Maxine's heeled boots on white carpet. She climbs the spiral staircase inside the house, past a suitcase on the landing, and through 2 green double doors to the interior of a large room where her father waits for her. He is playing a home movie of Maxine as a child. This quick visual makes it clear that he has been behind the murders, the anti-porn, anti-horror protests, and the torment of his own daughter. She backs away from him into the hall and knocks the suitcase down the stairs. It pops open and the dismembered corpse of a woman is visible, and it's giving Black Dahlia vibes. He puts a plastic bag over Maxine's head. In the next scene, Maxine is tied to a palm tree poolside, surrounded by cult members with camera equipment and her father in front of her. It's the cult of Hollywood, with God cast as the patriarchal figure, her literal father, replacing the director in the role of monster. He says to Maxine, "Play along with Daddy now, it's your big scene." Subtlety is not really valued in horror. Nor should it be. This is one of the best lines of the whole film. The police arrive and a shootout ensues. Maxine and her father end up at the Hollywood sign, him bleeding out and her holding a shotgun to him. The light of a helicopter spotlights the scene. A man shouts, "It's over." Maxine is featured on a daytime news story about her harrowing capture of a serial killer, her father. This coincides with the capture of the real Night Stalker, which was also a citizen's arrest situation that took place in a neighborhood of East LA after Richard Ramirez's picture was printed on the front page of the LA Times. He was recognized on a bus and then chased and beaten until a patrol officer arrived and arrested him. The vigilantism of the average Joe, or in Maxine's case, Jill, of the 1980s, doesn't really translate eras, but I, for one, appreciated the nod to the history of the year I was born in. We cut back to Maxine pulling the trigger and blowing her daddy's head off. "I will not accept a life I do not deserve." Now, not only is she a legitimate star whose rage has been satiated by justice taken into her own hands, but she is also a hero, an American one. She does a line of cocaine in her dressing room with the assistance of her SAG card and a rolled-up $100 bill. She looks in the mirror and says, "You're a fucking star." Pursuing power through movie stardom is riddled with pitfalls that mirror the female experience generally, and built on the very foundation of the American dream. It's the top of the mountain, the same mountain that the failed real estate venture Hollywoodland's sign still stands on today. Reading simply, Hollywood. Thank you for listening to Window Dressing's very special Halloween episode. I am Madeline Jane Auble, and I will be back soon with a new episode and a new season. Please subscribe, like, and review this podcast. It really helps. You can follow the podcast's Instagram page at Window Dressing Podcast for additional content. Goodbye.